Radiation is not a good thing, but I don't know of any death that's been caused by it. Now, I can't prove, nor to anybody else, that somebody who died at 80 would have lived to be 82 if he hadn't been exposed to a little radiation.
Defenders of the testing, Norris Radbury of the Los Alamos National Laboratory is certainly one, argue that the exact level of danger from radiation is not known.
They can't prove it was caused, I can't prove it wasn't.
But what of the evidence that sometimes the fallout was higher than the official safety standard?
Sometimes you get fooled. The bomb is different than you expected, so that's why you test it.
In 52 and 53, the whole thing escalated until they were exploding test bombs on low towers that were sucking up enormous amounts of earth that were 3 and 4 times larger than the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs. This was a turning point in terms of human health, because the bigger the bombs, the more the fallout. And to give you an idea, the radiation began to show up in the milk in St. Louis. It showed up in the wheat fields in the upper Midwest and so on. There was a rainout near Schenectady, New York. We're all downwinders.
After every one in this series of tests, radioactive fallout was recorded at various points all across the United States. For each shot, a picture of the cloud's path. Taken all together, the data shows a pattern of fallout that reached almost every corner of the nation.
It upset a lot of people. That's when people really begin to wonder about just what is this?
A few years after the 1953 test series, Quentin Nyson and others felt pretty sure they knew what this was. By then, cancer was striking in the most brutal way at the very young.
Well, you look at the background of the red hills there in St. George, that's for
Quentin Nyson's nephew, his sister-in-law Helen's son, Sheldon, died of leukemia.
Here we come. Now, there's Sheldon with the cowboy hat on and Bob on this side.
They both got cowboy hats. Sheldon had the light ones, Bob had the dark ones.
Sheldon died in July 1959, just 3 weeks after his 13th birthday.
Like you say, Sheldon, he died in 59, but did we have many deaths prior to him? And that's when all of it started, didn't it? Kind of boomerang with...
I can't remember of anybody that I knew of that died with leukemia, yet our little school had 75 kids, and Jessalyn Turner died just a few months before Sheldon, and they both had leukemia. And there's a little baby out to Enterprise at the same time died, and then Carlene Haven in St. George died about the same time, and really...
Well, Dr. Joseph Lyon, epidemiologist, University of Utah, he just studied death certificates. By isolating this area where most of the fallout fell, he turned up evidence that there was an increase in childhood leukemia of about 3 times or 4 times what you normally would expect. They were killing children. They were killing children. And these were kids that were 5 and 7 and 12 and 14. And when you saw the tragedy in terms of the families, it sort of broke your heart.
Between 1956 and 1961, in these small communities alone, 14 children aged 15 or younger died of leukemia.
I was probably the first one that I know of in that area to protest the fallout. And then others picked it up, and they were doing the same thing.
After her son Martin died of leukemia, Martha Laird, who was then Martha Bordoli, moved to northern Nevada. The old ranch near the test site that she left behind appears often in her paintings. She did not leave quietly.
I sent out petitions to all the congressmen, and I sent one to AEC, and I think it was Strauss. His letter was the one that came back and told me it was a small sacrifice to lose a son. Dear Mrs. Bordoli, this letter is in response to the petition regarding nuclear weapon testing on which you were the initial signer. Former President Truman said the dangers
that might occur from the fallout in our tests involve a small sacrifice when compared to the infinitely greater evil of the use of nuclear bombs in war. Sincerely yours, Louis L. Strauss, Chairman, Atomic Energy Commission.
And this I don't understand. It wasn't his sacrifice, that was my sacrifice. And if they had told me it was going to be my sacrifice, I sure as hell wouldn't have had him there.
Nobody consulted me on the debris fallout in Nevada, but I don't see why you're asking me these questions. I don't care to discuss this.
To this day, Norris Bradbury does not wish to discuss whether people downwind should have been warned about possible danger. He and others believe the testing was in the national interest. However, Bradbury's own relatives lived downwind. His son's family lived in southern Utah at Zion National Park. And his former daughter-in-law, Ellen, remembers that her father-in-law did warn her.
When we moved to Zion, I was pregnant with my second child. And he came and suggested that it wasn't a very good place to stay if you were pregnant or had small children because of the fallout from the testing.
I don't remember anything about that. I don't remember doing it. I don't think I did it, but maybe I didn't.
At first, I don't think I really understood what he was saying. And he said to me finally, clearly enough, look, this is a serious situation and this is not a good place to be, and you ought to go somewhere else. Then I understood that it was quite unusual and important that he would have broken this, kind of code and said this to me. He didn't want to have anything go wrong with one of his grandchildren.
Remember, people like Claudia Peterson were not warned.
Every week I go to the cemetery and put balloons on Bethany's grave because there's nothing else I can do. A couple of people have said to me, well, when are you going to get over this? And, I said, well, I have to do something.
Hi.
Today, what Claudia Peterson does to keep this issue alive is to spend time with people whose parents and grandparents also were not warned. On this day, Cassie Delgado's daughter Chelsea was dying of a brain tumor with only days to live.
Chelsea, hi. Oh, she's cold. Chelsea. She's just beautiful. You look a lot like my little girl did. She got sick too, but she's okay now. She went to heaven. What the Department of Energy and the government, their decisions they've made have devastated our lives. My life's been devastated and it'll never be the same. And it wasn't my decision. People making decisions for us that are destroying our lives. And we have no say.
The morning after this visit, Chelsea Delgado died. She was 4 years old. Four years ago, Congress allocated $200 million in compensation for those Congress believed had been affected by the radiation. But the Justice Department imposed rigid restrictions on who would qualify, and only half the money has been dispensed. When we come back, American soldiers who were ordered to witness the testing.
Turning Point, the cover-up at Ground Zero, continues in a moment.
As far as the test is concerned, you'll be okay.
Turning Point will continue after this from our ABC stations.
The big thing that upsets me more than anything else in this whole thing is that they deceived the men that were out here. They showed that we received less radiation to keep from following up on our medical treatment and follow up on our compensation and so forth.
Reason Wareheim last saw the Nevada desert near the nuclear test site in 1953 when he was a first sergeant in the Army, assigned, along with more than 3,000 other soldiers, to participate in one of the nuclear detonations, Shot Simon. A cross-country trip last summer brought Wareheim back to what remains of his old base headquarters on the test site, Camp Desert Rock.
All along here was just rows of tents. This place held about anywhere from 3,000 to 6,000 men in tents. There was tents went all the way down these hills.
Over 60,000 troops were assigned to the test site throughout the atomic testing. At Camp Desert Rock, they were briefed on their mission to observe the atomic detonations, to help the government learn how troops would react in a nuclear war.
You are here to participate in an atomic maneuver. This is not a haphazard maneuver. The radiation level may be high, but if you follow orders, you'll be moved out in time to avoid sickness. Well, that's the story. Don't worry about yourselves. As far as the test is concerned, you'll be okay.
We went out that way. From here, it took over an hour to get to where Shot Simon was.
Simon went off on April the 25th, 1953. Wareheim and his men were taken to trenches within 2 miles of Ground Zero. They were told that after the blast, they should move in the direction of Ground Zero to simulate an attack on enemy troops.
We were told to sit down in the bottom of the trench and put our head down, cover our eyes, and the thing went off. First thing you experience really is a light that's just so bright. You can actually see your bones in your fingers, it's so bright, with your eyes closed and your hands over. And then you feel a vacuum. It just feels like something like you're being sucked up into a vacuum cleaner. It just presses your whole body. Got out of the trenches, we started walking forward.
The troops had been told Shot Simon would be 23 kilotons. The government now admits it was at least 43. Wareheim is one of those atomic veterans who felt the need to stay on the government's case all these years. He and his lawyers say the radiation from Simon caused him to lose his teeth, develop cataracts, bone and muscular ailments, cost him 1 lung to cancer, and made him sterile.
I started talking to other atomic veterans. And all these guys are suffering for the same kind of things. And when you get 200-300 people together that are all having the same problems, and the only thing they have in common is an atomic bomb, then you start thinking.
The only veterans benefit Wareheim gets for radiation exposure is $65 a month for sterility. The government won't give him more, even though Congress ordered that atomic veterans with some typical radiation-induced illnesses should get compensation.
If they receive more than 5 rims of radiation. So then they hire a company that says, oh, but these men didn't receive but 1 rim, 2 rims, 3 rims, never more than 3.
A map that Wareheim says he carried on the day of Shot Simon shows his unit's route of march in a straight line toward Ground Zero. Later, the map was redrawn by the government contractor hired to estimate Wareheim's radiation dose. The new map showed the unit marching in a curved line, putting the troops further from Ground Zero.
It was all a lie.
Atomic veterans first brought suit in 1983. They won in lower court, but lost on appeal. Of the men named in the suit, only Wareheim is still living.
It was our duty to be out there. But on the other hand, I think at least we owed it to the men that were out here to have taken care of them after they were out here.
Like the atomic veterans, Downwinders also brought suit against the United States in 1979. Their attorney, Stuart Udall, asked the government to admit its mistake and settle out of court.
Quite frankly, I'm shocked that the government's position is that, well, go prove it. We have no settlement to offer you at this time.
The federal district judge in Salt Lake City ruled for the Downwinders and against the government. Quote, the court finds that defendant failed to adequately warn the plaintiffs of consequences from exposure to fallout radiation, and that such failure was negligent. Again, the lower court ruling was overturned on appeal.
The government of the United States took the position that since this involved national security, that the government could in effect do what it pleased, and no matter how much evidence we assembled, that the government is immune. This goes back to the law of King Henry VIII, I guess, that the king can do no wrong.
Today, despite the fact that the Clinton administration has urged the entire government to be completely open, the Justice Department has gone to court one more time, in this case, to fight a lawsuit by the men who actually worked on the test site itself.
Mine is the underground department, mining department. They used the tunnels for the explosions for their atomic bombs. And some of those tunnels, before I got there, was already had shots in them. They were radiated, they were hot.
Keith Prescott, who is battling cancer, became the first test site worker to file suit. These days, he can only watch as workmen prepare the foundation for a small prefab house where he's moving to be next door to his son. He has not been able to work since 1967, when multiple myeloma forced him to quit his job digging the test tunnels.
Precautions was negligent. There was no washing facilities in there to wash before you ate your lunch. You took your lunches inside and just sit them there. And another thing was your work clothes. You'd wear those work clothes, take them home with you, the family wash. It makes me real mad to think that if they knew anything about the radiation, why they would let us take our dirty clothes home from work and wash them with the family wash.
What could be a landmark legal case got underway today in federal court in Las Vegas?
It was not till this winter that the test site workers' case finally went to trial, 14 years after Keith brought suit. The moment brought lights and cameras, but only the promise of more argument.
It's a travesty of justice, in my view, that it's taken 14 years to get here, and it'll take another 5 if the government...
Stuart Udall and the other attorneys are asking for a settlement of $15 million for more than 200 workers now included in the class action. Of the men whose cases are being argued in court, again, only Prescott survives. The rest are represented by widows and other family.
They keep dragging it out, and one day they won't have very many people to fight with. What are they trying to do to us? Outweight us? Maybe we'll die, and they won't have to pay us off. But
Keith Prescott could have filed for compensation under a law passed by Congress 4 years ago, but only if he agreed to give up the lawsuit.
I don't think it was my place to say, yes, I'm going to, and forget about the trial. It's been too long, too hard fought. I understand mine is a case that that's going to represent the rest of the people, and so you know, it'd be nice if you could have a little bit of money, and just, I never had any, so I don't know how it feels. But I don't want to accept something and be sorry, and all those other people that probably don't have as much as I have.
And what I lived with for 3 years.
How it turns out, you just have to wait and see. A lot of people say that's all they want is an apology from the government.
As the trial began, what the test site worker lawyers got from the government was tough courtroom tactics. 126 boxes of documents, the Justice Department's evidence, arrived only at the last minute. Delivered according to the rules, but too late for real consideration.
This lawsuit is like a guy on a bicycle with a rifle against a tank. Here's the tank, and the day before the trial. You know, soldiers in a war sacrifice their lives for their country. Civilians, which we're dealing with here, to ask them to sacrifice their lives, particularly if they didn't know they were in danger and the government lied to them, that's something of another character to me.
You live this every day. You know, I mean, you don't forget things as you go along. A lot of people say, what difference does it make? It makes a lot of difference because they can turn around and do it again.
The object of the atomic bomb is to stop war, stop wars. And if you killed a few people in the civilized world to save 10 million people in wars, you might regard this as a good bargain.
I think if it was just me, after all these years, I'd say, forget it. But I had a friend of mine. He fought for years and years and years over this thing. And when he died of cancer, he was laying in the hospital, and he looked at me and he says, "Where I am, whatever you do, don't give up this fight. It's just not right. It's just not fair." And believe me, I don't intend on giving up this fight. Because it's just not fair. Not much left, is there? I doubt if it'll ever get a historical marking.
On this whole issue of radiation, the government seems divided. On the one hand, the Energy Secretary, Hazel O'Leary, is busy declassifying reports on radiation. On the other hand, the Justice Department is seeking court costs from some of the veterans who sued the government. People you've met tonight are not divided by any means, and for them it seems that money is no longer the issue. What they want is what it is sometimes hardest to get from a government: a simple apology.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit.
As it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen.
O my Jesus, forgive us
our sins,
save us from the fires of hell. Lead all souls to heaven,
especially
those most in need of thy mercy.